Culture is the way of life of a people, community, nation, or social group. As we understand it, culture can be used by individuals to closely connect with others who share a similar worldview and to explore the experiences, values, beliefs, and understandings that are intertwined between them.
Folkloric dance allows for individuals to tap into a shared sense of imagination, memory, and history to create their own connection between their personal experiences and the experiences of their cultural community. Traditional Indigenous dance communicates this shared Aboriginal cultural past through the use of body as an expressive tool to illustrate stories about the dreaming and thus reflections of traditional ways of life. This is illustrated in the documentary television series Dream Time to Dance, as traditional storytelling through dance becomes a way for Indigenous Australian students, such as Rachel, to form a modern understanding of her Aboriginal background through dance that is taught by Aboriginal leaders and passed down through the cultural history. Rachel forms a modern Aboriginal identity for herself in contemporary Australian society as she bridges the gap between her inaccessible cultural background and her modern life in contemporary Australian society through dance and the way she expresses it through her body. In his book Sources of the Self, philosopher Charles Taylor explores this idea of the complicated modern identity and identifies that constant subjectivity of one's identity sheds light on those aspects of the self that are thought of as natural and historical, and illustrates instead how they are often constructed by ourselves over time due to our experiences. Nick Mansfield similarly talks about cultural ideas and their effect in dance and other cultural events by stating that these ideas are now understood on the level of the pulsating, breathing, feeling individual self, thus giving way to more introspection for the individual. Through our case study, we can see that
In the multicultural landscape of contemporary Australia, you can find snippets of almost any culture you can think of. The Colombian dance culture is no exception. In the heart of Sydney, Sandra Lucas created the Colombian Cultural and Folkloric Organisation so as the Australian public could have access to the rich cultures of Latin America and so as Latin migrants could have a channel to celebrate and connect with their cultures. The organisation uses the medium of folkloric dance to tell traditional stories, express cultural ideas, and embody the spirit of their homeland through a diverse range of folkloric dance styles, from mapalé to cumbia. Dance as a visual culture can be understood in its pure form as a corporal art observed by a live audience. However, for Colombian folkloric dance to obtain and maintain a legitimised space in the Australian contemporary society, it has had to engage with other mediums of visual technology. Primarily, the use of video and image online and social media platforms has attracted the attention of the Australian public enough to support the existence and growth of the organisation. However, somewhere in the interplay of traditional and contemporary culture there has been a shift. Scholar Rose asks us to consider the meanings given to visual culture through their compositionality, context, and the physical way in which they were created. When reflecting upon the new visual mediums used to represent Colombian folklore, we can see that the meanings have been changed. From shaky recordings of the streets of Palenque, an isolated Afro-descendant region of Colombia, and the original birthplace of the Mapalé style of dance, to performances of Mapalé at Sydney's Darling Harbour, the sacred stories hold an interesting juxtaposition with the city skyscrapers in the background. As Friedrich Kildler said, the technologies used in the making of an image determine its form, meaning, and effect. To further understand how Colombian dance culture exists within a contemporary Australian society, we must acknowledge Harvey's cultural logic of late capitalism. This is exemplified through the modern branding of Colombian folklore. Once a method of sacred storytelling is now marketed as an exotic entertainment option consumable by a curious Australian public.
through our case study, we can see that dance is a strong connector of individuals with their culture, and through visual modalities and tactile representations of the body, cultural meanings are formed and developed in contexts such as contemporary Australian society. The subjectivity of place and context allows for the individual to understand their complicated personal identity while remaining connected to deep cultural roots and a shared sense of community, thus forming their own unique image of themselves in the context of Australian life and their traditional folkloric life. We chose to present these findings in an audio-visual context as it correlates with our discussion about visual cultures and the implications of new technologies on creating meaning. This format, we feel, adds a deeper layer of focus, and the visuals demonstrate the cultural practice on screen while we as individuals create the meaning and context behind it verbally.